Well, hello and welcome to this iteration of the Ukrainian support convening sessions. Today's session will be on cultural considerations, and my name is Hannah Messick. I'm a consultant with Solvera, and we are partnered with the California Department of Social Services to support their Ukrainian outreach project. I first want to start by saying thank you so much for being here and being interested in learning how you can serve Ukrainians even better. Each session that we host is focused on a specific group with specific topics. So today's session is on cultural considerations for educators, direct service staff, and that can be at resettlement agencies or maybe a Department of Social Services. If that's not you, if you're media or anybody else, please go ahead and exit. This is specifically for those individuals. Our future sessions are going to be on September 28th and October 12th. We meet every second and fourth Thursday at 10 a.m. through mid-November. The upcoming sessions will be specifically designed for UHPs and their sponsors. So those sessions will be in English, Ukrainian, and Russian. For today's session, we recognize that no culture is a monolith and that what we're speaking about today has many facets, and we're not going to be able to cover all of them. So we're talking about a very complex subject in a really short amount of time. So we recognize that some of the things may not apply to every single individual. We're going to review some best practices and share some resources with you as well. At the end of the session in an email, we will send you a PowerPoint and links to all of the slides. So take notes as you will, but know that you'll get the slides as well. Please remember not to share any personally identifiable information during the session today, any specific details of names, places, things like that. However, we do invite you to use the question and answer box and upvote question. So if you have a similar question, go ahead and give that an upvote so we know that's something that you're interested in. Everyone will remain on mute, and we will have a live question and answer at the end of the session. Additionally, we really value your feedback, so please complete the survey when we put the link in the chat box at the end of today. Our guide for today, our expert for today is Tatiana, and she is a part of our trusted partner, Nova Ukraine. She's been in the United States for about 19 years or so, hails as an ESL teacher previously, and I'll pass it over to her to share a little bit more about herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tatiana Hauser. I am a teacher by profession, but lately I've been a full-time mom of 3 elementary school children who go to Newport Mesa Elementary Schools. I know many of you are from Newport Mesa. I came from Russia in 1999. My dad was Ukrainian, and I do have family in Kiev that I'm close with, Kiev, Ukraine. Also, my husband and I, we lived in Germany and England from 2013 to 2018 and traveled a lot in Europe and Asia. So I have been in situations where cultural differences made me quite confused. We came to California about 5 years ago. I began volunteering with Ukrainian refugees in April of 2022 when there was a big wave of Ukrainian refugees at the border here in San Diego. While volunteering at the border, I joined with Nova Ukraine, an organization that helps Ukrainian refugees all over the world, in Ukraine and now here in US as well. Became their volunteer case manager with emergency housing team. We help Ukrainian refugees find shelter here in this country. I also administer our Ukrainian refugee shelter in Orange County here. We've helped 79 people so far that have stayed at our shelter and now successfully rent and work and live all over the US. And currently we have 7 families in residence that we help. So these tips and this information that we've collaboratively created comes from many Ukrainian refugees that we've worked with and volunteers, Solvera, and it's based on our combined experience with Ukrainian refugees and also personal knowledge. So we don't have all the answers, of course, and we don't speak for all the Ukrainians, not at all. We just hope some of our suggestions you will find helpful.
Thank you, Tatiana. And she's going to be our guide and teaching us today. The topics that we'll be learning about are history and facts. So just kind of what is the general landscape? How did things come to be, and more general information? And then we'll go into norms, similarities and differences between Ukraine and the United States, and that might help you understand some of the situations you might be experiencing. We'll throw in some stories there and finish with best tips, tools, and practices as well. I'll get us started with history and facts. So Ukraine has many prominent sites and cultural heritage sites in the country. It was an important part of the medieval times and recorded history there. Then in the early 1700s, it became a part of the Russian Empire. You see that in this map, it stretches much larger than its current political boundaries are. And in the bottom right here is a picture of the Romanov family, a very important family in Russian history. However, you see in this map, Ukraine has been a part of many different countries, or many different countries have been a part of Ukraine. During the USSR, it was ruled by Soviet leaders, whom you see over here on the right-hand side of the screen. Modern Ukraine gained its independence in 1991, and you see the countries here on the bottom left that were formerly a part of the USSR and now have gained independence. In this map here, you'll notice where Ukraine is relative to Russia and Europe. And it's important to think about these countries as independent. They're each different countries instead of just kind of a Russia that morphed or not. Another thing that's important to remember is that scholars have called Ukraine a cleft country, meaning it is a country that is split between Western and Orthodox ways of thinking and kind of civilization in that way. Modern Ukraine, though, it is about 4 times the size of Georgia, a little bit smaller than the state of Texas, and is the largest country fully located in Europe, second largest in all of Europe. Something really important to note here is that when it comes to language, just barely over 1% of Ukrainians are fluent in English. This is so important to remember as we provide services to newly arrived Ukrainians here in California, that less than 8% can read, write, or speak in English, right? Majority of Ukrainians speak and use Ukrainian in their personal life, and about a third or so speak Russian at home. You'll see on the pie chart on the left that the vast majority of individuals in Ukraine are either Ukrainian or Russian, with just less than 5% making up all other nationalities. In addition to language, though, and fluency, it's really important to note the differences of even just the building blocks of the language. Tatiana, can you share with us more about that?
Sure. And just a little bit of the English that Ukrainians come here with. Please remember that Most of them learned British English, which is different as well. And the system of language learning is different too. It's more a translation method, which is reading and writing and translating from Ukrainian to English and back. So when they come here, speaking portion is very difficult for them. And even though they may be fluent, they still have difficulties. And most of them will not be, and will just have very basic English, if any at all. And as you can see here, this is an example of a Ukrainian alphabet, which has 33 letters, 20 consonants, 10 vowels, and 2 semi-vowels. It comes to us from Greek language. It's a Cyrillic alphabet, as opposed to the English alphabet that is Latin. 27 million people speak Ukrainian today. Ukrainian comes to us from Old East Slavic language that gave origin to Belarusian, Russian, and Ukrainian in medieval times. Ukrainian has mutual intelligibility with Belarusian and spoken Polish more so than Russian. So it's important here to remember that not all Ukrainians will understand and speak Russian, and many emotionally will not want to speak Russian, even if they can. So as social workers, as educators, meeting with Ukrainian families, we should never assume that, oh, should we get you a Russian translator? You know, we need to ask what language they prefer to speak, and then seek translator of either Ukrainian or Russian, because some of them will be more comfortable in Russian. As you saw that pie, 34% are Russians, speak Russian in Ukraine. So they will be more comfortable with Russian, not Ukrainian. Now, the recently arrived Ukrainians in California, this wave of refugees may be different from many other waves, in the sense that a vast majority of these refugees are middle-class families that are educated and were very well off in Ukraine. They had their careers, their homes. They did not plan on immigrating. They did not want to leave their country. It just happened to them and they had to go. Many of them spent quite a long time in Europe before coming here. So I'd love for you to, for a moment, imagine something like this happening to you today in the US. Another country attacks us and the bombs are falling. You have to run to the bomb shelter several times a day. Your neighbor's home is destroyed. You have to think quickly and you have to decide where to go, what country. And you make that decision and you go to a foreign country today. Leave your favorite work behind, your career, your friends, your family, and you're in a foreign country. You have to learn the language, you have to learn the customs, you have to make money. And what can you do? You don't have language skills, even though you might have a beautiful resume and lots of experience. You might be an engineer, a lawyer, a doctor. You cannot work your profession. You have to do something that would pay the rent and help you put food on the table for your family. So usually it's cleaning and babysitting, construction work, handyman, so on and so forth. So for many families, many Ukrainian refugees, that's really tough psychologically and emotionally to downgrade professionally like that into, you know, entry-level positions. I had a refugee I was working with, a young woman who was so happy she got a job as a dishwasher, because she had a job and she was making some cash. At the same time, she told me, I can't believe I am now doing what I did at 15 as my first job. And she is, you know, a 35-year-old mom with a single mom with a child. So when a new culture comes and we meet someone from a different country, there are some friendly confusions happening always. And the biggest one, it seems like, from so many refugees that we've heard is the American smile and friendliness, and how people you don't know will approach you and smile and say hi. So for many, it's like, do we know you? Why are you smiling? Why do you say hi to me? Do you want something from me? It's confusing because in Ukraine, you don't usually smile to someone you don't know. You keep a neutral expression. And I have a funny story of when I came here many years ago, met my husband. I was showing him photos, family photos, and he saw a family of my brothers from my brother's wedding. He assumed it was a picture from a funeral because no one was smiling. Everyone was so serious. And I had to explain to him that that is the norm. You don't smile, you keep your serious face. You don't want to look like a fool smiling. You know, it's, you smile in very special circumstances and occasions when you're truly happy and you're honestly showing your happiness.
Yeah, we had a story there as well regarding smiling and facial expressions. There was a newly arrived Ukrainian who was at the supermarket, and she was checking out, right? Going through the line, there's the conveyor belt, there's the cashier there. And this individual didn't speak English at the time. And she's looking at the cashier, and the cashier is just smiling and doing this. And she goes to pay for her groceries. And that cashier smiling and nodding and takes her money. And this newly arrived Ukrainian woman is thinking, are they taking advantage of me? Like, should I be bartering for this? Like, is she smiling because she's pulling one on me? Kind of like, so just recognizing that facial expressions and other engagements that maybe seem very mundane to those who have been living in the United States for a very long time might be quite confusing. Commonly, folks in the United States, when they're uncomfortable but want to demonstrate you're okay here, everything's fine, they'll smile, right? And they'll do this and really kind of nod and show a lot of very emotive, positive expressions. And that's not necessarily the case. That doesn't mean the same thing. So Tatiana, that story about your husband mistaking a wedding for a funeral really demonstrates it well. Share with us some other things that might be different.
Right. So let's see. Small talk is very, very hard to most Ukrainians. To me, I still cannot do small talk. It's so tough for me. In Ukraine, you don't really do small talk. You don't talk to people you don't know. It's always business. It's, you address someone, you talk about something you need to talk about, or you just don't talk at all. Don't smile with strangers. So here, when people come and small talk is a norm, people might love the small talk with a neighbor, but then expect friendship out of it. We've talked, but no invitations follow, and a neighbor might see them the next day, not even recognize them, and not wouldn't remember their name, and that's really strange. Here in US, it's a form of an extended greeting. In Ukraine, it's a path to friendship, would be. Personal space. Ukrainian students or a family might stand much closer to you. That's the norm. People come from urban areas mostly. They live closer to other people. They take public transport. They walk a lot. So it's, you stand, when you talk to people, you stand much closer. And here in US, it's a bit different, right? 4 to 10 feet. So Ukrainians might be confused and even hurt if, they stand close to you and you step away. Then it's like, oh my gosh, they don't like me. This teacher doesn't like me. Things, confusion might happen. So keep that in mind. Facial expressions. Here in US, positive, smiles. In Ukraine, neutral, serious. So when you meet a student's family at a teacher conference, for instance, don't think they don't like you or they're angry or mean. They, out of respect to you, they come seriously to the meeting with you, and they might not smile and be friendly and do small talk. They are there for business, to find out about the school, what they can do to help you teach their children better. Now, activity requests as well. In Ukraine, time is polychronic. People perceive time as infinite. So if we're having a good time, we'll continue having a good time. If this business meeting is going well, we will, go over it a little bit, not a problem. It's okay to be late, a little bit late, right? And even for social meetings, if you invite Ukrainians over to your home for dinner, don't expect them to be there on time. More often than not, they will be about 15 minutes late. That's out of respect to you as a hostess, so that you have those 15 minutes to truly get ready for their arrival. And no one will come early. That's just rude to come early to a party. But yeah, a little bit of lateness here and there. So some families might struggle with tardiness actually. And those big meetings with social services as well. It's just hard for many. Again, not all. We don't speak for all families and all individuals, but for many, time is polychronic. Here it's monochronic. On time. It's important. So with activity requests, Ukrainians might, invite you call you at 5 to invite you to dinner at 6, and they don't expect to make these complicated scheduling things to figure out when to, invite you in 2 weeks from now, and maybe a bit confused that you cannot come and you want, to schedule something in advance. It's just a bit different. They need to get used to that. Now, asking for help is very hard for most Ukrainians. Culturally, it's really important to keep face and to create an image of a successful person who do not need help. It is just, it's painful to lose face in a way that you admit to needing help. And that goes also with appearance. Appearance matters a lot to Ukrainians. So a family might struggle paycheck to paycheck, but they will find enough money to have some designer clothes that they will put on to go to a meeting, to go to school. Women may be very well put together in the sense of hair, makeup, eyelashes, nails, and together, they come to a meeting and you think, oh my goodness, they don't need help. They're fine. But they very much will need help. It's just that, again, projecting an image of success is really important to culturally to Ukrainians. All right, and gender roles as well might be very different. Most families that we work with adhere to a more traditional perception of male and female. So father makes money, father makes big decisions, mother is involved with children more. So a dad might not be there playing with the kids, goofing off. mom will take the kids to different after school activities and be the one on the phone and coming to school meetings. They might not come together. You might never meet the dad, actually, and that's absolutely fine. That is just how it is, especially with refugees and all the tasks that they need to do. I mean, first and foremost, they need to figure out how to make enough money to survive here. So dad is the one concerned with that the most. Women run things behind the scenes. There is a funny saying in Ukraine that man is the head, but the woman is the neck. So even, you know, making the man feel like he's making the decisions is important, but the for real decisions are made by the wife anyway. But we'll pretend. I talked about the image and being well dressed, clean shoes, nice car. Oh my goodness, so many families who came here, they rent a car, a nice car, and it's so expensive and they can't afford it, but they have to have a good American car. And it's yeah, we try to talk to them and explain how it shouldn't be their concern yet, but it's cultural. It's really tough to overcome that. Looks and perceptions. Families in Ukraine, many, especially young couples, have children earlier and they live with their parents. So grandma is always there to help. Also, they may have uncles and aunts and cousins nearby. So kids are used to growing up with their relatives. It's really tough for a family to come here and they don't have grandma's help. They don't have extended family for help. And children might miss their families terribly. Also, many women come here, their husbands are still in Ukraine because they have to stay in Ukraine. So kids miss their dads. Please keep that in mind, that there are many refugees that come here without their fathers, their husbands. Now, in Ukraine, it's a little different when it comes to after-school activities and kids' playtime. So kids go to school, then they come home, and there is homework, right? So at least an hour of homework. So here, many of our refugees actually, elementary school kids especially, many schools, they don't give homework, right? And that's concerning. How come? No, they need homework. They need to come here and sit and do homework. It's a little different here with elementary kids, right? Kids come home and they have a whole schedule of after school activities and classes they go to. In Ukraine, homework, and then you play with your friends. You know, hang out with the kids, and adults do their adult things, kids do their kid things. Here it's a little different, that parents are way more involved. Fathers are more involved. Many Ukrainian women have told me how amazing it is to see American dads, you know, goofing off with the kids on the beach, really playing with the kids. It's just not really the norm. Again, not all families, right? But many. Dad is serious. Again, that image, right? Bread maker, decision maker. Kids play with kids, and moms as well. They will not be as playful. They're adults, right? It's hard to lose that adult face and be goofy. It's just very, very different, very American. Parents don't micromanage play dates. It's tough to make, you know, schedule kids' play dates. You know, tough to call an American mom and figure out how my child can play with your child. It's not really done. Religion and holidays. 80% of Ukrainians identify as Christians. So it's either Christian Orthodox, if they're from the East mostly, or if they're from the West of Ukraine, then Greek Catholic. About 10% are atheists, and there is a large community of Crimean Tatar minority, primarily in Crimea. They're predominantly Muslim or secular. So holidays, mostly Christian holidays that Christian Ukrainians celebrate, or national victories for the whole of Ukraine. There is no Halloween in Ukraine. I mean, it's kind of like a fun American version of Halloween is celebrated in some schools, especially private schools. Some kids do it, but it's not as well known as it is here. It's not as big as it is here. So the concern that we've heard from parents is how overly gory and graphic it can be with decorations around, that little kids get afraid and cry, and it's just not appropriate. Why go over the board with gore? And one family was telling me how they made a mistake of taking their 3-year-old son to a Halloween store, and poor kid cried because he was so afraid from all the masks over there. Thanksgiving, of course, is a very American holiday, so they might not know what it's all about. So just, talking to the families, explaining things to them. Don't assume that they know. Don't assume that the kids in your classroom, Ukrainian kids, will be excited and will know what's going on. And a really important bit here about the triggers that people coming from the war zone may have, such as air shows. There are some really popular ones here in OC that happen, and they're really loud, and the planes fly really low. And last year we had several families at the shelter who just stayed at the shelter, and they put headphones on their ears and closed themselves in because they could not deal with it. It's just too scary. And your body often reacts before your mind does. I even heard a story of this poor young woman. She was walking, and there were planes flying, and she jumped on the ground, and she didn't even realize she was doing it. She said, just jumping on the ground, then got up and then did it again without realizing. Your body just does that for protection. It's something that if you've experienced that, you'd know. It's terrible. Fireworks, weapons, guns. So just keep that in mind, please. Because we've had some volunteers offering tickets to the air shows, being excited about it, and then we sort of like, oh, let's be careful with that. Let's not be so excited. People might not want to go.
Yeah, and speaking of things that could be different between Ukraine and the United States and new experiences, right? New experiences can be uncomfortable. And so I want to bring up the topic of diversity. As we mentioned previously, Ukraine doesn't have many non-Caucasian individuals in it. So it's likely that someone from Ukraine has never met and had a personal interaction with an African or an African American. So it would be common for you to maybe observe discomfort or uncertainty around minorities. That could be the LGBTQ plus community, any kind of difference, right? These individuals are commonly from a mainly Caucasian, upper middle class community. And so now they're living in low income settings and seeing how people are reacting and stress and things like that. And they're associating that with an entire group of people. So it's really important to communicate, to name what you see in an observable way. If you're working with a client, hey, last week I noticed you said this about this group of people. Can you tell me more? Right? And then it would be important to listen and then help the individual also understand that it is part of this complexity. It is all the differences that makes a strong democracy, and the ability to have difficult discussions, to talk about uncomfortable things, and to really navigate the world with a sense of curiosity. Now, as Tatiana just mentioned, when you're under stress, your brain and your body don't work the same way, right? And so it's really difficult to come from a space of curiosity and inquisitiveness when you're under stress and just trying to survive in this new country where everything's different and you maybe feel out of control, and you associate some of those negative feelings with people that might be behaving or look a way that you're not accustomed to. So please take the time with clients that you're working with to have really open and honest conversations.
So school and education, and what normal is in Ukraine and in US may look and feel very different. And again, we're talking about most schools in Ukraine, not all. Some refugees may have gone to private schools and more westernized schools that, the curriculum and behaviors were very similar to US schools. But for the most part, what we are hearing from refugees is quite different. The classroom interactions are different in the sense that the teacher's style in Ukraine most often is authoritarian. Children listen to the teacher and look at the teacher for guidance throughout the day, or teachers. And here in US, it's cooperative, right? So when kids come to the classroom, they may be confused. They may perceive it as teacher has low expectation. We can be ourselves here. We can be like we are at home. We can relax a little bit. And because they're not used to this, problems may arise because they're used to a very well planned out, rigid day. And they know what's expected of them. And here they come, they don't know what's expected because they're used to, sitting and listening. Creativity and initiative is often discouraged in Ukraine. So to make their own decisions, to know when to raise their hand and ask, and when not to, when to get up and when to work in groups, it's all maybe very new to them. And that may cause problems and issues and bad mood and being unsure in themselves. Teachers in Ukraine, for the most part, the way of teaching, they may be strict. They raise their voice at times. Here, teachers are very friendly, smiling, acting like friends, not teachers, right? So that may be confusing as well. In Ukraine, student autonomy is non-existent often. They need to ask if they want to get up, to go somewhere, even walk around the classroom. So students often don't know when they come here, they don't know how to handle their new freedom. And clothing, that's a very interesting bit. In Ukraine, as we've already mentioned, image is very important. So parents try their best to send their kids to school in their best attire, often ironing their clothes. Here, it's very casual. And even, schools often have pajama days, right? And dress up days, crazy hair days. All of that is really strange. And one of the families at the shelter I administer once told me, I will never send my child in a pajama to school. That is just absolutely crazy. We won't do that. That we don't understand why. They perceived it as a huge distraction. They don't understand why, because then kids are distracted. It's not strict, right? Pajamas. Well, what can they learn in their pajamas? So it's just very, very different here. At the same time, many parents love it that it's so casual, that they don't need to worry about the clothes, right? Kids can just wear their favorite t-shirt and shorts and be okay. So I know many parents appreciate it. But again, kids may be confused. And in the beginning, they won't know how to act, what to do. So please be aware of that. Now, some of you being teachers, you may have had instances where children bring you gifts, especially on the first day. In Ukraine, the tradition is on the first day of school, you bring teachers flowers and maybe small gifts such as candy and something you may have made at home or bought. Throughout the year as well, children bring gifts to the teachers, and that is very different. So please don't be surprised. And it's absolutely fine to say no to a gift. Because I'm sure, the district may not allow certain gifts above a certain, dollar amount, so on and so forth. I would encourage you to be grateful for the gift and be very honest and say, thank you so much. It means so much to me that you brought me this. Unfortunately, I cannot accept it because my district, my school, they don't allow me to accept gifts. So thank you very much. And I appreciate it. Maybe I'll take a picture of this gift to keep for myself. I'm so grateful, but please take it back to your parents. Unfortunately, I cannot take that, but thank you. So in that manner, they would appreciate your honesty and your appreciation. Now, school curriculum may be very different here as well, especially in elementary schools. Usually parents do tell us that it may be two full grade levels lower for math, for instance. So what we learn here in fourth grade, they learn here, they learn in Ukraine in second grade. So some parents are upset and they don't understand why. Also, they don't understand why there is no homework. Often here in elementary schools, there is just no homework or very little homework. So it's, I encourage you to talk to your Ukrainian and Russian parents and tell them, that what you've learned here, that, homework, it's best to spend time with your children at home and read to them, right? As opposed to do worksheets. It's just a different system. Homework is spending time with the kids and, playing Lego together and playing other, toys that encourage creativity together other than homework. It's different. They may perceive it as it's strange, teachers lazy, not giving any homework. We're used to coming home in Ukraine and there is like an hour of homework at home. Now they don't have anything. What are we to do with them? They have no homework. It's different here. Most kids are so busy with other activities after school, right? That they do have things to do, but your Ukrainian families may be different. Their kids may not have scheduled, sports and art and music and so on and so forth. They just will go home and what are we to do with them, kind of a thing. So again, a little different. If there are activities after school, often with these families, it's academic. It's, chess or a tutor or something, related to school, not necessarily arts and crafts and just fun things that many kids here do. So that's a little different as well. So we do need to adjust expectations, right? And figure out how culture impacts behaviors and how a child perceives everything. We've been contacted by a district recently about some bullying going on. And I can see why it may be happening. These kids, they're in a lot of stress, right? And parents are in a lot of stress. And then they go back to their school. And often what we see is kids are placed together, right? If they speak Ukrainian, they're placed together. If they speak Russian, Ukrainian, they all, often are placed together. And to us, we see it as a 50-50 chance. It might work great. It might not work at all because, again, kids try to relieve their stress, and who are they going to pick on? Someone who they think will not react, right? So they go and they fight with their own. Also, we need to remember some kids may be Russian, some kids are Ukrainians, because we do have a huge influx of Russian political refugees who come here with their families. And unfortunately, kids, they hear things at home, they watch the news with their parents at home, and they may be very volatile towards a Russian student, for instance, knowing that the student is from Russia, and vice versa. So placing them together sometimes may not be a good idea. And very often total immersion works best, where they're immersed with American kids, kids from other cultures, so that they have to speak English, they have to learn new culture, and very often they adjust much quicker and better that way. And when it comes to bullying and teasing and all that, often Ukrainian kids at home learn that you don't tattle to the teacher, you don't talk, you try to solve it on your own. And often if you're hit, you hit back. And even parents that we work with often teach their kids, hey, if that boy hits you, you hit back, right? Unfortunately, again, a cultural thing. And we do talk to parents about how that is unacceptable here. But unfortunately, that's what kids learn, and that's how they act. Instead of talking to the teacher, they try to solve it on their own, and then problems arise. Please remember that that's cultural, and talk to the parents, talk to the children, tell them what they can do if they are being hurt by someone, right? If someone is saying something bad to them, they don't like it, that they need to come to you, or what the procedures are with that. They need to know, they don't know. So again, back to the image, right? The strong image of the Ukrainian and Russian as well. Kids learn that. And when it comes to bullying, they don't want to look weak going and telling the teacher what's going on. They want to be perceived as strong and solve their own problems that way. Now, educational supports. Culturally, parents are not happy when they know their children are taken out of classroom to work with ESL specialists, for instance, because again, they perceive it as, my child will be seen by their classmates as weak and maybe special education. Why are they taken out of the classroom? So they might not be okay with that. And you'd have to talk and explain to them that that is for your child's best, benefit. We're trying to help them with their English. I know it's a big stigma in Ukraine, even especially like if their children may have, special education issues, they may not talk to the teacher about it. They may not start the plan because it's shameful to many. Again, perceived weakness. I personally know a Russian family who came here, and they decided to write in the first survey that they got, what languages do you speak at home? They did not put Russian, they put English, because they did not want their child to take that ESL placement test and then be perceived as ESL indifferent and get all those, ESL specialists and all that, because then the child is perceived as different. We don't want that. And I had a long conversation with them about how it's only to help your child, but it was really tough for them too. And that's what they did.
And
so just
Tatiana,
remember.
I remember you mentioned that it's especially important for schools to, as much as possible, to integrate these assessments and really help the parents understand, as we mentioned here, that it doesn't mean your child has a major problem. It's to help them integrate, right? So really understanding what are those parents' goals, what are the students' goals, and explaining how the actions that the school might be taking, whether that's an assessment or, seeing the school counselor or psychologist, is really a benefit to achieving the goals that they have for their family and their child. And I know you've shared with me several stories of how school districts in your area have done a good job at that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Explaining and telling parents why and telling the kids why is very important, very important. And um, if your district has capability, hiring teachers' aides and classroom aides that speak the language would be so beneficial. And there are so many Ukrainian refugees in the area with that have college degrees and that have very good English skills that would love these jobs. Just keep that in mind. I think it would be perfect that every class with influx of Ukrainian and Russian refugees would have such an aide who possesses the language. It would be huge help, because it's not just the translation, but also all these little cultural bits that the aide would know and tell the teacher and explain to the teacher what's appropriate for the students and what's not appropriate. I think that would be amazing. So hopefully.
And if your school, maybe doesn't have that, or you're hearing this on a recording, you'll have our contact information at the end of the slideshow. You can certainly call us and ask any questions to us as well.
Right.
So our final section here is services and benefits. And there's several things that are different again. Tatiana, feel free, to share about kind of how appearance and the way that has been difficult. I know that, as social service providers, as eligibility workers and things like that, we're trained to go through kind of our standard procedures and eligibility checks, but it can be hard sometimes when someone walks in, with maybe designer clothes to think, well, I don't know if you really need maybe CalWORKs or RCA or supports. So if you could share with us a little bit about what some of the families you've been working with have been sharing.
Right. So again, as we've mentioned, this influx of refugees with the Russian-Ukrainian war is different, right? Most of them are middle-class, college-educated families who had great lives and very similar lifestyles to many people here. And they come here and they have nothing. So of course they may look the way they're used to look back in Ukraine. Also, as I mentioned, image is very important to Ukrainians and Russians. So you dress for success. You put your best on when you go out to work or anywhere, really. You always dress up. So again, to have the image of strong, successful, educated, smart, intelligent person, for most women, looks are very important, and they do spend time and money on nails and eyebrows and hair. So the family who comes to your office, they may look very well put together, and perhaps, yeah, they don't need as much money because they look so good. But the fact of the matter is they probably spend their last money on that, designer clothes and other things, and that they rented a very nice car. But it doesn't mean that they're okay. They very much need help. So the image is very, very important, as I said, and they want to be perceived as they want to be perceived, and it's really hard to ask for help as well. So they might come and talk to you, and they just don't know how to ask. They don't know what to say. They're not used to any of this. So please keep that in mind.
And you may find sometimes as well that Ukrainian families, you're asking them a question and they say one thing, and then you ask the question, maybe later in your intake a different way, and you get a different answer. It's really important, again, same thing as within education, to explain that you're here to help them, that you're here to help them receive the maximum amount of benefits that they're eligible for. They've just never engaged in systems like this, and they really want to prevent doing anything that could disrupt their ability to receive some of these state and federal supports. So again, just going slow, explaining, and taking time for questions would be really helpful.
Right. Transportation is another difference. Most refugees that come here come from urban areas, and they're used to excellent transportation that's timely and safe, public buses, private taxi services that are very affordable, much more affordable than Uber and taxi services here. On time. So they might be a little shocked here at the system here. So please, if you can, please explain to them that it's a little different, and it might take them, 2 hours to get to work on a bus. At the same time, really important to offer. I know school districts and social services can offer bus,
like vouchers or ride passes.
The right bus passes for
Mhm.
adults and children. A family, only recently actually, a family was so excited when they were able to buy a car. They've saved and they bought a used car, and they were telling me how they had to take the bus and had to the hardest part for them was waiting for the bus very, very early on at a bus stop here in Orange County, because they felt unsafe. And they were together, husband and wife, but there were some homeless people that would constantly come up to them, and the same homeless people. Because I mean, unfortunately, we do have quite a few homeless families here in Orange County, and they usually are at the bus stops and taking buses as well at times. So it's just different. They may not encounter anything like that in Ukraine. So.
Yeah, I know that you shared with me that in most urban areas in Ukraine, you don't really see unhoused peoples or families, or those maybe that are experiencing, erratic behaviors, things like that, just generally in public. So again, just helping families understand kind of what the circumstances and literally the landscape is here. Really helpful.
Yes. Very helpful.
I hope you're getting a laugh out of this slide, everybody. This is one of my favorites here. Tatiana, go ahead and explain what's going on and why maybe families are really frustrated that things take so long. Like, why is that? What's their experience in their home country?
Yes. So that I've heard from so many families. Ukraine was really amazing before the war, when it came to all the public services being very quick and people using apps for everything, and just no lines, no wait times. And many people are shocked when they come here and they go to social services, for instance, asking for some relief, and they're told, we will be in contact within, a couple weeks, or you have to wait for 30 days for this. It's very different. They're used to things happening quickly, and even getting a phone, right? A family of 5, I remember going to get phone plans, and they were there for a whole day trying to get that phone plan for 5 people, and were so shocked, telling me that, in Ukraine, it would have happened within like 20 minutes. We would have had everything. Don't understand why we had to wait.
And wouldn't even have needed to go into the store, right? Like they often the idea that here in the United States, you need to go into maybe the Department of Social Services or human assistance near them, and things like that, versus maybe in Ukraine, you can just kind of use your smartphone, snap those pictures, scan those images in, and things like that. So just the whole thing has very different expectations. And so really again, describing that, explaining that, just the idea that, you know, we're still using fax machines is very antiquated, and that's not lost on our new Ukrainian neighbors.
Yes, yes. Yeah, just different, something to get used to.
So a couple of the things here that we wanted to provide some reminders of, Tatiana, if you want to explain about the schools, and I'll share a little bit with the providers.
Right. So as I mentioned, from the experience that we've had with our Ukrainian and Russian families this year and a half, is we think it's best for the children to be fully immersed in American culture and language. So perhaps placing them not together in a class, but separately in all the different classes would be best to avoid any confrontations, bullying, help them learn and pick up the language better and culture. As I mentioned, aide that speaks the language or knows the culture would be great if the district can do that. Now, remember holidays, how there is no Halloween in Ukraine and Russia. It's very American. So perhaps don't assume that students know what you're talking about. And if you have some project or classroom assignment, don't assume that the child will know what's going on and be able to do it well if it relates to Halloween, for instance, or Thanksgiving. Take time, if you can, explaining why behind various, requests to parents and children as well. This is why we do it. This is how it will benefit your child. It's all about helping your child. This is why we're doing it. So important, and parents will appreciate it very much. And you just trying to learn what cultural differences there are to learn is a very big thing. What you're doing right now is amazing. And thank you for your interest and for your willingness to learn about the cultural differences that are there and that may hinder your children and the adults that you work with, their understanding of why things are happening.
Yeah, as Tatiana said, thank you for being here. We have a couple more tools and tips slides, and we'll send you some more links and things like that in the follow-up email as well. Or you'll be able to find that online. But really, the best thing that we can do as providers, again, is to start from a place of calmness. I know that you're putting out a million fires all the time, and that this is maybe a very small percentage of the population that you work with on your total caseload, but really taking your time to be calm, recognizing that things are happening currently in Ukraine, that the news is still ongoing, that this war is still ongoing, and that there's things that could be, happen just moments before someone walked into your office or into your class, or got on the phone with you. So really taking time to be calm, listen, and as much as possible, use those great motivational interviewing techniques and trauma-informed services. If you're not familiar with those, please, let us know. We'd be happy to come and provide a training or link you to some really beneficial materials on that as well. Finally, here we have, I want to introduce you, if you're not already familiar with, several different kinds of translation apps, and some also provide interpretation. So translation is when it is text, interpretation is when it is live voice. Most of you are likely familiar with Google Translate. Each of these apps here have pros and cons. I think one of the neatest features of that Google Translate is if you're using a smart device, a smartphone, using the camera to translate in real time whatever text is in front of you. So you can do that using both sides. It could be that you also need to educate Ukrainian families about these apps as well, so they can use these in their daily lives, right? It could be that your district or your county isn't able to put all materials in Ukrainian or Russian as well. And so help them, have agency and autonomy DeepL is great because it can process many different kinds of file types. So you can upload PDFs or all sorts of different things. You can have it be an app. And so if you're typing an email, it can help you with that in communication as well. Finally, Tarjimly, it is really fantastic. It has different levels of plans as well. And so if you're not able to bring in someone who speaks the language, please consider signing up for a paid plan with Tarjimly. They are fantastic. I know that I've used all of these apps and softwares before, and they've been fantastic. We're specifically talking about Ukrainian and Russian here, but if you're serving other populations, these apps also provide services in other languages as well. Finally, as you've already done, being here, providing, growing your awareness and providing a welcoming and warm environment is all the things that we've already talked about. But I think you've seen probably in your experience so far that even just a little greeting in someone's native language can be really helpful. And so Tatiana, if you could share a little bit and help us pronounce these words. As you mentioned earlier today, there's literally consonants, vowels, ways of enunciating that English doesn't have. So if you could pronounce a few of these for us, that would be great.
Right. So welcome in Ukrainian is actually 2 words, right? And they're pronounced laskavo, prosimo. Glad you're here is a bit shorter and easier, hopefully. Ради вам. Thank you is дякую. Nice to see you.
Can you say that one again? There's a lot of vowels in that one. Say again, the way it sounds.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. Дякую.
Thank you.
Дякую. Nice to see you is приємно вас бачити. Hello is вітаю. And goodbye is до побачення.
And I do want to notice as well there, as in all languages, there's kind of a more formal, greetings, and then there's a little bit more informal. So can you look at the hello again and share with us, you shared the formal, would you mind? So there's hello, and then just kind of the more informal, like, hey.
Sure, yeah, it's much easier. It's привіт. Привіт.
Yeah, thank you.
And even if you go to Google Translate and you click on the little icon that will, give you the sound of it, you can listen to Ukrainian native pronouncing words for you. I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, so as those parent-teacher conferences, or you're getting on a phone call or something like that, just that little extra can help. If you see a Ukrainian coming up in your caseload to have an intake meeting, do your best to try one of these words. Yeah. All right, finally, a couple last resources here. We have what are bridge resources. Solvera is working with the Refugee Programs Bureau through California Department of Social Services to develop a website. But in the meantime, we have these bridge resources. They are available to anyone in view only. They will be included in the link that is sent out. The spreadsheet has both something that you can search, use that Control F function to find kind of what would be most helpful here. And it's sorted by who it's best for, the kind of type, as well as Q&As. And then finally, these are going to be transferred and migrated over to a full website. So it's going to have a chat bot. You see an example of it there. That will be available 24/7. It is interactive. It will also be in Ukrainian. So you'll be able to speak to it in English or Ukrainian in typing. It has all sorts of resources, everything from how to help English language learners to why is my EAD delayed? So whoever you are, you can get on there and ask questions about it. You see that map, that is very helpful. We're updating it weekly with providers and different agencies. So go ahead and zoom into wherever you are, and then you can click on the left and there'll be filters that you can drill down to, maybe service provider type or what services are being provided. So we look forward to launching what's going to be called supportguide.org soon. So after this, you're going to receive the slide deck, the reference links, and please take time to complete a survey. If you have any questions and answers, I know we've seen a few already in the chat. Tatiana, can you answer for us, like what should people do in situations where, you know, maybe their school district has advised them, hey, you know, no, put all the students in one, you know, one area. I know there's different kind of theories of camps of thought around this, especially for English language learners, whether it's better to, you know, have everybody translate for one another. I know we've shared repeatedly, hey, as much as possible, really allow immersion. So what would you advise, you know, kind of teachers having those conversations, what to consider on that? So maybe their district or principal said, hey, do this. How can they open a conversation in their school about some of the things that we've talked about today?
Right. So the suggestions and recommendations that we give, we look at the families that we've worked with all this time and what we hear from them, what we hear from the kids. And even if you talk to psychologists who work with kids who've been through trauma, and adults, right? Well, they come from traumatic situations, and very often, children especially, they don't want to, certain things can trigger their trauma, right? So kids from Ukraine, they may not want to hang out with them at all because they trigger that trauma. They want to be somewhere totally different. They want to hang out from someone totally different. They don't want anything that would remind them of home in the beginning, right? Not always, but often. That's what we hear. So they want to be with American kids. They want to be like American kids. They want to speak English. They want to learn about the culture. So sometimes they revolt against that, and they they don't want to be with the child that, you know, they have to sit with and speak Ukrainian with. They don't want to speak Ukrainian with them. Again, not always, but often that's what we hear. And then certain things start happening. They may fight. They may say hurtful things to each other. It could be a Russian child, not a Ukrainian child, right? Or it might be Ukrainian child from the north, and this one is from the south. And there are certain things going on there too, where it's like, oh, you know, you spoke Russian in Ukraine, Ukraine, and you shouldn't have. And it's very complicated right now. A lot of hurt feelings and a lot of stress. So we've learned it may be much better to just place them with American kids, with, you know, in classes, not group them together so much. So just address it that way. And it's just, you know, also the school of thought when it comes to English learning, right? Immersion is usually very helpful in young ages and in any age, right? I mean, when you just have to learn, you have to speak, you have to listen, and try your best. You don't have that crutch of translation and someone telling you what's going on. You'll be surprised how resilient kids are and how quickly they learn at a young age.
Yeah, thank you. I see another question here about mental health supports, given these things. So one thing to remember here, so the question is, you know, where can I find mental health supports for families, especially if you're in a school district or a social service provider? One thing to remember on that is the different kinds of insurance. And so if families are on Medi-Cal or Medicare, please either connect with them about this or connect them to a provider who can help explain their health insurance benefits and what in-network and out-of-network might be, right? So starting there, helping folks understand kind of from scratch. And then there are several places to find behavioral health and mental health supports. Again, that is stigmatized. So one way that you can go about, if you're seeing somebody else that you think might be struggling with their mental health, really normalizing, hey, you know, sometimes when I feel, pretty, sad or anxious, I have a hard time sleeping, or I notice that my eating changes. Or maybe I become more irritable with people. That's really normal, right? So if you've ever had an experience like that, normalize it, and then help connect to resources. We will send a link out with that. You'll also be able to find that on the website. I think that's all the time that we have for today. But if you have additional questions, please go ahead and put those in the survey. We would be happy to follow up with you. There'll be a space. The survey is anonymous unless you add your email. If you add your email, then we'll follow up with you with those questions. That's also a chance to let us know how we're doing, how we can improve, and most importantly, what topics you would like to see next, right? Our next sessions are coming up. Are specifically, the future ones are geared towards Ukrainians, UHPs, and supporters on topics like insurance, auto insurance, getting loans, cars, things like that. And then after that on temporary protected status, asylum, UHP, all those status questions. But if you have additional questions, please let us know. In the follow-up resources, we will also provide a link if you have a technical assistance request, or would like additional trainings for your specific group. Reach out, let us know. That's what we're here for, and we would love to provide that. So thank you for your time today. Thank you for attending. Tatiana, you're amazing. Thank you for sharing with us. And however, wherever you go on today, we just appreciate you. Fill out that survey. Let us know how we can better support you. And again, thank you for being here and really wanting to provide great services to our new Ukrainian neighbors.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.